with Democratic Congressman Khanna of California. Let's take a quick trip down memory lane, if you'll allow me, Congressman. We all remember when President Biden went to Saudi Arabia, despite the kingdom's rampant human rights abuses, and he even fist-bumped Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, despite MBS's responsibility for the very grisly murder of a Washington Post journalist. We were told the president needed to take that trip to represent and protect American interests. We don't see MBS returning the favor today. Do you think President Biden got played?
I was opposed to him taking the trip then, and the trip was clearly a mistake. Look, I'm not just disappointed. Like many Americans, I'm outraged, Jake. We have done so much for Saudi Arabia. We defended them when Saddam Hussein was going to invade in the 1990s, when I was still in high school. We supplied them with over 70% of the arms that they import. We basically make their Air Force functional. And for them not to ease when we have an energy crisis, for them to play the United States, while they are making over nearly $100 billion, they have a 73% margin on this. It is outrageous, it is ungrateful, and there need to be consequences.
So earlier this week, before OPEC plus slashed its oil production, you told CNN if they did this, it would be, quote, beyond the pale. You said the Saudis would need to be, quote, dealt with harshly. Here's the president yesterday. Take a listen.
What's your reaction to the OPEC plus decision, Mr. President?
Disappointment, and we're looking at what alternatives we may have. There's a lot of alternatives. We haven't made up our mind yet.
So it doesn't sound like you think the president is dealing harshly enough with the Saudis, or as he might have put it while running for office, making the kingdom into a pariah. What do you want President Biden to do?
No, he's not. And there are two issues. One is that they're profiting off the American people while making record profits. And the other thing is that they murdered Khashoggi and still are conducting one of the most brutal wars in Yemen, that the truce is no longer there. I would like President Biden to announce concrete steps. First, he could suspend the Patriot sale, $3 billion. He could suspend the air parts that we supply the Saudis. That would ground the Saudi Air Force in days, and they can't just go to Russia and China because that would take years. And if he takes those steps, I guarantee you the Saudis would blink. The Saudis also know that other OPEC folks are going to supply oil. So we have far more leverage over them than they have on us, and we need to be far more bold in the actions we take.
You heard Caitlin Collins mention Democratic Senator Chris Murphy's tweet, which said in part, quote, "I thought the whole point of selling arms to the Gulf states, despite their human rights abuses, nonsensical Yemen war, working against U.S. interests in Libya, Sudan, etc., was that when an international crisis came, the Gulf could choose America over Russia and China." You obviously have called on the administration to halt these weapons sales. But the Biden administration has not said that it's something that they're considering. Why aren't they even considering it, do you think?
I don't know. I agree completely with Senator Murphy. I mean, if the concern is that the Saudis would further cut production, they can't cut much further than the 2 million barrels they're already cutting. So there really is no downside for us to be more decisive. And at some point, we have to make it clear to the Saudis they can't keep taking advantage of us. I mean, 73% is their margin. Look, I understand why Russia wanted the cuts. Russia doesn't have a margin because they have $35 discount on the barrel of oil that they're selling. The Saudis are either doing Putin a favor or they just want to make more money and at the expense of the American public. We need to be far more decisive.
Why do you think the White House isn't leading on this the way that you and Senator Murphy want them to be?
Well, look, I think the people in the NSC who gave the advice to the president to go to Saudi Arabia, they need to explain what they were thinking. There are some people in the NSC, not Jake Sullivan, certainly not Secretary Blinken, who my understanding was opposed to that trip, but there are certain folks who have a Saudi bias and who have been taking the Saudi side even in the Yemen war. They need to come and give an explanation to the American public why that trip was planned, why we're not taking more decisive action.
The White House is considering releasing more oil from the nation's strategic reserves, which would help a little in terms of easing some looming pain at the gas pump, though not really all that much. That's not really what the stockpile's for, of course. And we should note the reserves are at their lowest levels since the mid-'80s.
Well, look, I support that, but if they're considering 10 million barrels, and the Saudis are cutting 2 million barrels a day. So that's not going to make up for the gap. Now, the Republicans, I think, are wrong when they're saying that somehow the production isn't up. I mean, we're producing almost 12 million barrels a day. That is not quite at 2019 levels, but it's higher than 2020 or 2021. So the idea is that we are producing, but what is wreaking havoc is the OPEC and the Saudi decision, and we need to stand up to them.
Well, we're producing, oil companies are producing, but that doesn't mean they're selling the oil to the United States. They're selling it to whoever pays them the most, right?
Well, and that's why I think we should consider an export ban on the gasoline other than for natural gas to European allies, which I understand now that the president is considering. One other quick point, Jake. You know, the American Petroleum Institute is actually opposed to the NOPEC, to having antitrust action against the Saudis, because they are arguing, they fear that if the Saudis increase their output, this is their own words, that it would hurt domestic oil producers because the price would go down. So, you know, the American Petroleum Institute isn't playing this straight either.
Democratic Congressman Ro Khanna of California, thanks for your time. Appreciate it.